Well, let's get to our first conversation this afternoon. Now, the Group Chief Executive Officer of the Nigerian National Petroleum Company Limited, NNPCL, Mr. Bayo Ojulari, has pledged to attract sectoral investments worth $30 billion and $60 billion. That's by 2027 and 2030, respectively. We're ramping up in-country production. Mr. Ojulari said the company under his stewardship would raise crude oil production to over 2 million barrels per day, sustained through 2027 and attain 3 million by 2030. The new GCEO disclosed this at the town hall meeting with the NNPC Limited staff in Abuja, a few days after assuming duties as the new GCEO with a determination to pursue the company's bold ambitions and build an NNPC that will be the pride of all Nigerians. Mr. Ojulari, again in a statement made available to media signed by Chief Corporate Communications Officer Mr. Olufemi Shoneye, said the company would also expand refining output to 200,000 barrels per day in 2027 and 500,000 barrels per day by 2030. The GCEO, while unveiling his agenda, said the company would grow gas production to 10 billion cubic feet that's per day by 2027 and 12 billion cubic feet by 2030, and deepen energy access and affordability for all Nigerians. My guest is Professor Omowumi Iledare. He's a Professor Emeritus in Petroleum Economics, Emmanuel Egboga Foundation, Abuja. Thank you so much, Prof. It's good to have you start the show with us this afternoon.
Good afternoon, and thank you for having me. I hope you are doing okay.
All right, Prof. I think it's good to look at this targets now. $60 billion of investment for the oil and gas industry. Is talking about 30 by 2027, 60 by 2030. I don't know. You're a major player in this industry and understand the politics and all that happens in this industry. How feasible is this, clearly, with the challenges that we face as a country?
Again, thank you again. Thank you for the narratives. And honestly, your narrative was excellent as well.
Thank you, Prof.
And that 33 million barrels per day in 2027 with $60 billion investment is a possibility. If you cast your mind back, the 3 million barrels per day was set for 2010. 4 million barrels per day was set for 2020. It is interesting that we are now looking at 3 million barrels per day in 2027 with the 37 billion barrels reserve. If you are producing just 0.1% of that 30 billion, 0.01%, that will give you 3 million. So in that case, when you say you have approved reserves of 37 billion barrels per day, that means you have 90% likelihood to not recover anything less than that. So 3 million barrels per day is supportable with the current investment and reserves. The key that BBO, the new GCEO, had to think about is, why was it that we were not able to achieve it in 2010? And why were we not able to achieve the 40 billion barrels reserve set for 2040, despite the fact that the average price of oil was over $70 over those periods? And the moment he is able to identify the reasoning behind it, accomplishing the set goals that he has is not going to be difficult. And there are three things to pay attention to. And the number one is politics. Number two is the type of leadership mindset that he has in mind. Is he going to be transactional or is he going to be transformational? The third one, which is investment flow, is very dependent on the first two. Corruption, which is actually the mantra for politics, and then the leadership mindset that the new board, which is what I call new wine in new wine skin or new wine in old skin. Once he's able to delineate the difference between that and then use the PIA as his anchor, I don't see why 3 million barrels per day is a difficulty, even despite the oil theft and insecurity. Everything depends on the mindset of the GCEO, transformational or transactional. I believe in him, certainly. I have confidence in his capability. What I'm worried about is the management of the political intrigue that has endangered the oil and gas industry over the last few years. Even it is inherent in the PIA, and that's what has made the implementation of PIA convoluted. He needs to begin to look at the rule of law to accomplish the set goals that he has in mind.
Adhering to the rule of law is part of what I saw in your submission in that write-up too that I read through. You talked about that as a petroleum industry. But why is it been a bit difficult to adhere to the basics of this PIA? We know how long it took us to pass this into law. Because if we don't do the needful, we might not achieve what is expected to be achieved. Why why get to a law signed into law by the president and we now have issues in implementing? What are the interests we're trying to address here?
Let us just learn from it, because we've already gone through the process. All you need to do is to look at history. NNPC of old is the major problem for every aspect of the reformation of the Nigerian oil and gas industry. Because most of the time they tend to look at NNPC as the focus, and they try to maneuver the reformation process on the basis of their limited interests to survive. And that's why if you look at the PIA with respect to governance, you will see that the order of the shares of NNPC Limited is Ministry of Petroleum Incorporated, Ministry of Finance Incorporated. But anytime they want to talk, instead of using the term Minister of Petroleum Resources, they will use Minister. But they will specifically mention the Minister of Finance. Again, that is the influence of NNPC in the reformation of the process. How can you be talking about minister without specificity to the Ministry of Petroleum, but then you will mention the Minister of Finance? And you have some of those things well written. If you look at the 30% profit oil, you will see a conflicting interest as to whether it includes the management fee and exploration fund or just the exploration fund, which was the intention. So I want to plead with the new board of directors, and they have all arrived, to be ensured of proper interpretation of the intent of the law with respect to their target. Now, it is always easier to advise the new people coming on board what we think they can do. You see, the new board is not part and parcel of those who influence the end result of NNPC, of the PIA, which is what you see is actually haunting NNPC Limited from being able to do exactly the commerciality objective and intent of the PIA drafters. You know, the issue, my friend, see, the intent of the law is different from the letter of the law. And where you have quagmire is the interpretation of the letter of the law, not the intent. You even know the intent when you are looking at the letter, but then you interpret the letter of the law in a way that suits your objective without regard for the intent of the law. So, so that's why I talk about the rule of law. The intent of the rule of law is what we expect the new board of NNPC, which in my opinion, I still qualify it as new wine in new skin. But the old structure is still there. And that's why I believe for the new board to really think in terms of rekindling restructuring and rebranding NNPC Limited as they met it to fit the objective of the PIA.
Prof.
I know the intent of the PIA.
Yeah. Prof, let's take a commercial break for a minute.
I don't agree with some of the letters.
All right.
Yeah.
Let's take a commercial break.
But the intent,
we will come back and we'll definitely continue this interesting conversation. This is Business Nigeria. We're back after this break.
In a world that's always evolving, one name has always been a constant: United Bank for Africa. 75 years of championing dreams, breaking barriers, and igniting change across the continent and beyond. From our roots in Lagos to the global stage, UBA is Africa's heartbeat, connecting cultures, empowering futures, and driving progress. We're more than just a bank. We are a partner in your journey, a supporter of your dreams, and a builder of a brighter tomorrow. Every interaction with UBA is a step towards a future where possibilities are limitless and dreams are realized. United Bank for Africa, where ambitions find a home, and together we shape a better world. United Bank for Africa. One brand, global influence. United Bank for Africa, Africa's global bank.
All right, thank you so much for staying with us. I still have Professor Iledare there. We've been discussing the task ahead of the new management of the NNPCL. Now, Prof, my next question will be cost efficiency and, of course, upstream, managing the upstream of the Nigeria's oil and gas industry. Also, addressing operational costs. How do you see this new management also addressing all of this? Because in the local parlance, we understand that even production of crude in this part of the world is a bit on the high side.
Yes, again, thank you for the question. Let me again commend, for whatever it is worth, the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria for breaking the jinx. For the first time, we have people with technical capability managing NNPC Limited at the board level. That is commendable. It takes courage to break that political desire to delimit the potential of NNPC to accomplish cost efficiency, which is number one, value creation and addition, and maximization of shareholders' investment. I'm going to answer your question directly, but there are certain structural things that we need to understand. The owner of NNPC shares is the federation, not the federal government. The federal government is actually holding it in tent. They are holding it in trust. It is the federation that owns the share of NNPC Limited. And in terms of cost efficiency, and again, I'm not here to criticize NNPC, but to find a way to make them do things better. If you take time to look at the cost per barrel of equity oil and look at the cost per barrel of private share, that becomes the beginning in which you can do this. And because NNPC has majority share in ownership of proved reserves in Nigeria, they expected to bear the majority of the cost. And that's where the first thing they need to address with respect to cost minimization is managing international companies' cost profile within the context of benchmarking. Because you have so many participants here. So you can have what we call a confidence interval of the cost of doing any activities. And that's where their research and development and policy unit, strategy unit, we call them corporate planning and strategy, comes in. Data is key. A company A cannot be completing a well with 50 million barrels, and another well in the same Niger Delta is costing 30 million barrels. And you are the principal cost bearer. The new management team must be watchful. Benchmarking is the key. Second, they need to begin to look at the assets that they are participating in. Are they adding value or destroying value? No. If you have 60% share and your partner is divesting his own share, if you cannot acquire it, put your own share on the table. Perhaps they need to be thinking of not being the minority operator of some of these assets. And Bayo can do that. Second, the board, though non-executive, they think long-term and they are strategic. They are not operational board. They are strategic board. So they must properly advise the management team of where they want to go. And the key, if you look at the objective of NNPC, is their operations must be commercially oriented.
Yeah.
And that's why I challenge the Federal Executive Council and the State Council, whatever they call State Economic Council, to let go. Give this management team what I call the new wine in new skin to deliver their key performance indicators. Here's my warning to BBO, the new GCEO. To date, there are 19 GMDs. The longest serving one is probably Kiari. Now, Bayo is the third among the 19 that came from the private sector. The first one to come from the private sector is Dakoru. And he almost left, I won't use the word. Yes, because that man was a brilliant Shell exploration manager. I was aware of that because I was in Shell at that time. Excellent explorationist. But when it came to NNPC Limited, and he also became a Minister of State, you can write that history in a different way. The second one is Kachiko. I actually debated Kachiko several times. In fact, there was a time I told him to leave if he's not going to deliver. If you cannot report directly to the president, there's no reason to be a Minister of State. You have to go through his chief of staff. Bayo is the third person. My prayer is for him to be successful because he has been a successful professional. But it is a mine. Being the head of NNPC Limited is a mine. And you must be willing to let go. If they are not going to let you deliver your key performance indicator, your allegiance is to the federation, not to the federal government. And your reporting line, if you want to achieve this goal of efficiency, enhanced production, and expanded reserve base, your board is your boss, not the Federal Executive Council.
Prof,
and that's why if you see my write-ups.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Let's wrap up with the energy transition initiative. That's also a very big one. And we know that the NNPCL has been talking about this and what should be done. You're saying that they should reduce emission while maintaining fossil fuel as its core business. Can you make us also understand that and what that pertains for that energy transition which everyone is talking about at this time?
Well, I'm glad the people promoting energy transition are coming to the realization of the consequences of not understanding reducing emission is not the same thing as reducing energy consumption. You see, energy consumption per capita of any nation directly influences the GDP per capita of any nation. So if you don't want energy crisis, you cannot reduce energy consumption on the vogue of energy transition. It's just like the same thing you see Trump doing, using anti-Semitism to promote certain agenda without coming out clearly. Yes, energy evolves. Energy does not transist. That's why you've never seen a dominant primary energy just disappear. That's why you see have some people cooking with firewood. However, we must come to the realization that technology is the key to energy emission, carbon emission reduction. Just like technology is the key for expanding energy resource base. I do not look at energy transition as a dilemma or trilemma. I look at energy transition as an opportunity for any nation to expand its energy basis. Now, when we come to NNPC Limited, they cannot lose the focus. That's why you see even Shell itself is redefining its strategy for being an energy company. Mm-hmm. If you look at Total, they are still investing in founding hydrocarbon. Yeah. If you look at even Saudi Aramco is developing a technology to reduce emission through petroleum consumption. Petroleum will continue to be in the energy mix. A removal of petroleum from the energy mix is inviting that disaster. And we are not even there yet in terms of the level of energy we require to expand Nigerian economy. The only thing that is delimiting our potential is energy consumption. I want to encourage the current board, without necessarily not talking the talk about energy transition, they must focus in the core energy business for which the stakeholders are sacrificing to make sure that NNPC is there to meet their energy demand. In a local way, yes, NNPC has a dilemma. International market and domestic market. But in the overall sense of it, if domestic market becomes robust, international market will be okay. So I think I'm interested in more or less investing in other energy sources as long as it does not destroy their value. It's what we call portfolio system analysis, whereby you look at all the portfolio of your assets and look at the performance indicator like profitability index, value investment ratio, and every year you look at your budget and optimize it. And that's where their corporate planning and strategy must be fully respected. And I'm particularly happy because they have a reporting line to the GCEO, because that is the backbone of the sustainability of NNPC Limited beyond now. And I wish them well.
Professor Omowumi Iledare, I know we need more time to talk about this, but that's our time. I must thank you, Prof. It's always interesting having you on the program. Professor Emeritus in Petroleum Economics, Malele Boga Foundation, Abuja. Thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of your day, Prof.
Thank you, Tolu, for inviting me. It's always a pleasure. That's what I went to school for. Public education on things that will grow Nigeria. Right, and I'm delighted to have the opportunity on your channel.
Thank you so much, Prof. Well, interesting conversation, you would agree. But we are having